reading from the book of Judges. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah. He passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and through Mizpah Gilead as well. And from there he went on to the Ammonites. Jephthah made a vow to the Lord. "If you deliver the Ammonites into my power," he said, "whoever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites shall belong to the Lord. I shall offer him up as a burnt offering." Jephthah then went on to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his power, so that he inflicted a severe defeat on them, from Aurora to the approach of Minnith, 20 cities in all, and as far as Abel-Keramim. Thus there the Ammonites brought into subjection by the children of Israel. When Jephthah returned to his house in Mizpah, it was his daughter who came forth, playing the tambourines and dancing. She was an only child. He had neither son nor daughter besides her. When he saw her, he rent his garments and said, "Alas, daughter, you have struck me down and brought calamity upon me. For I have made a vow to the Lord, and I cannot retract." She replied, "Father, you have made a vow to the Lord. Do with me as you have vowed, because the Lord has wrought vengeance for you on the enemies of the Ammonites." Then she said to her father, "Let me have this favor. Spare me for 2 months, that I may go off down the mountains to mourn my virginity with my companions." "Go," he replied, and sent her away for 2 months. So she departed with her companions and mourned her virginity on the mountains. At the end of the 2 months, she returned to her father, who did to her as he had vowed. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will.
Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will.
Bless the man who makes the Lord his trust, who turns not to idolatry or to those who stray after falsehood.
Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will.
Sacrifice or oblation you wished not, but ears open to obedience you gave me. Burnt offerings or sin offerings you sought not. Then said I, "Behold, I come."
Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will.
In the written scroll it is prescribed for me to do your will, O my God, is my delight, and your law is within my heart.
Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will.
I announced your justice in the vast assembly. I did not restrain my lips, as you, O Lord, know.
Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Jesus again, in reply, spoke to the chief priests and the elders of the people in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. He dispatched his servants to summon the invited guests to the feast, but they refused to come. A second time he sent other servants, saying, 'Tell those invited, behold, I have prepared my banquet. My calves and fatted cattle are killed, and everything is ready. Come to the feast.' Some ignored the invitation and went away, one to his farm, another to his business. The rest laid hold of his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged and sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burnt their city. Then the king said to his servants, 'The feast is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy to come. Go out therefore into the main roads and invite to the feast whomever you find.' The servants went out into the streets and gathered all they found, bad and good alike, and the hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to meet the guests, he saw a man there, not dressed in a wedding garment. He said to him, "My friend, how is it that you came in here without a wedding garment?" But he was reduced to silence. Then the king said to his attendants, "Bind his hands and feet and cast him into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Many are invited, but few are chosen." The Gospel of the Lord. Yesterday's excerpt from the book of Judges was difficult because we didn't have a context. Today's reading is difficult both because we need a context and because of the content. Okay? So what is being talked about here? Well, human sacrifice. Okay? Human sacrifice. And if we didn't realize that this was a part of ancient Israel even, as well as the pagans, with the story of the binding of Isaac in Genesis, here's a pretty clear indication that it was something that happened. What is the larger context that I think we have to understand stories like this? Two dimensions, I believe. First is, we have to understand that this story and mentality come from the same kind of mentality that gives us many of the Greek tragedies, okay, where the idea is that you are caught on the horns of a dilemma. Okay, in the stories of the Greek tragedies, for example, what are you supposed to do if you are a son and you must avenge the murder of your father, but the murderer is your mother? Oops. And that's the story of Electra and Orestes, okay? So, the horns of a dilemma. How are you supposed to deal with the situation? Or you could talk about Antigone. Okay? And there the dilemma is, how do I obey the edict of the king? These enemies shall not be buried. And yet at the same time, respect the needs and the claims of family. My brother is one of those that's out there. I've got to bury him. Okay? How do you deal with this situation? That's the situation that we have here with Jephthah. He makes a vow, and yet it's his daughter that he sees. He's caught in the horns of a dilemma. His one only child, he wants to spare her, yet he cannot break his vow. At least that's how he understands taking a vow, because this is the second part of the context that we have to have. Most people in this part of the world at this time are illiterate, and therefore the spoken word has great significance. And when we bless or curse, these words can't be undone. They are there. They have existence. And so this is true of the prophetic word, but it's also true of ancient blessings. Remember the story of the blessing that was supposed to be given to Esau, but that Jacob steals. Okay? Once Isaac realizes he's been tricked, he can't undo the giving of the blessing to Jacob. Jacob has it just like he was given a check. And so, from Jephthah's point of view, the word spoken solemnly to God can't be undone. It's the old saying of, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. In this case, be careful what you promise. You might have to be honest with it. Now, what does it mean to take an oath? I think that Jephthah would agree with part of what Thomas Moore said in A Man for All Seasons. When he tells his daughter Meg in the prison, she says, say the words of the oath, but in your heart think otherwise. And he says, but what then is an oath but words you say to God? And he says, when a man takes an oath, he's holding his own self in his own hands like water. And if he opens his fingers, then he needn't ever hope to find himself. And Moore says, some men are capable of this, but I'd be loath to think your father one of them. Jephthah would understand that too, but there's a major difference. In Moore's case, it is the taking of an oath quite deliberately, knowing what you're saying and knowing what the implications are. In Jephthah's case, he didn't have a clue. Now he's caught. And so this is the context that we have to understand. If only Jephthah had been born a few centuries later so that he could have heard the word of the psalmist, okay, which is the word that we celebrated today. Sacrifice or oblation you wished not, but ears open to obedience. Burnt offerings and sin offerings you sought not. Then said I, behold, I come. Or if he'd been able to hear the words of the prophet Hosea, it is mercy I desire.